over the last 2 years, the entire Oromia region have been engulfed by the protest that challenged the myth that this regime is formidable, very powerful, and no one can challenge it. Have you ever been following this protest over the last 2 years, and how do you see its significance and its contribution to the future of the stability, peace in the region, and resolving the century-old problems in that country?
I think we have to agree on our reading of the events, and I said this was a very unique phenomenon to me. I have seen a number of political events, upheavals here and there, but it was unique. It was unique because it was grassroots based. It was created a perception of conducive investment environment where they partnered with their looting partners, I call them, and deprived the people of Ethiopia, and particularly the Oromos, of their land, of the opportunity to share the prosperity in the country, build their own infrastructure, their economies, and benefit from their endowment. They were looted all the way. And that accumulation, in spite of pressures, in spite of repression and suppression from the Wayane, the people endured all these injustices for so long, and finally come to explode. It was an explosion that has been brewing for the last 2 decades in the Oromo land and in Ethiopia overall. The perception that people have the Tigrayans benefited from this is not true at all. It's a very small group. It's a gang of kleptocracies who have come to control the economy of Ethiopia. You may think that having the military power, the security under your control, you can crush any opposition. You grab here and grab there, you loot here and loot there. It took a long time, but finally the people exploded. And all this myth about economic growth, double-digit, fast-growing economies in Africa, a stable economy, a powerful government with institutions of defense and security to crush terrorism here, terrorism there, that perception was revealed. It was concealed for so long. How did it happen? As I have said earlier, it was not a leadership of one organization that mobilized the population in the Oromo land and other lands in Ethiopia to explode. And that tsunami was an explosion. It's like an earthquake bringing in a tsunami anywhere. That earthquake was an accumulation of repressed feelings, repressed rights of common people in Ethiopia, where I can compare 1,000 looters controlling the economy when 90 million people are deprived of their rights to enjoy the benefits of the economy of the country. And politically, they have been deprived. All this myth about the Democratic Republic, where is this EPRDF now? Where is this myth of an umbrella organization that would allow everyone to participate? Where is Article 39 in the Constitution that brags about giving every nation the right to self-determination, including and up to secession? All this fiction was exposed. It was not new for the people in Ethiopia. They lived it. They lived it for decades. They were living in a deprived environment, politically deprived, economically deprived, living under a kleptocracy. Intervention from outside was one factor. It was not the strength of the Wayane. It was not its military might, its security apparatus, or its even the economic manipulation or control. The partners from outside did make the contribution. Why were the people in Ethiopia silenced and how? Was it Wayane alone? Not at all. Wayane was not alone. Wayane had all those who encouraged it to do, the patrons who were there to say, well, you have an image of a regime that was supposed to serve their agenda in the region, was portrayed in a very rosy picture. All these factors who repressed or suppressed the aspirations of the Ethiopian people could not face this explosion or this tsunami. And it came as a surprise to many. Why is it very important for not only the Oromos, the other peoples in the region? Imagine, in spite of repression, in spite of manipulation, in spite of collaboration of external powers, people can achieve their aspirations when they're ready to do it. And that was, I think, a good lesson for everybody in Ethiopia and outside Ethiopia. Not only for the Oromos, but the Amharas, the Tigrayan, the Somalis, and other peoples in Ethiopia. It was an eye-opener, in my opinion. It was a test for the will of the people, the power of the people, who've been repressed for so long, to finally come the last 2 years to see us. Well, now there could be attempts on the part of the Wayane and its collaborators to repress, intimidate, buy probably some here and there, and try to give an impression that everything is under the control. It's a self-deception. It's a self-deception on the part of Wayane and its patrons may try to give an impression, but I say, wait and see. People's power is there all the time. Whatever your advantage, you'll never prevail. Kleptocracies never prevail. Repressive groups never prevail. And that has been history. I mean, it's history of generations. We go back to the early 20th century, the Second World War, after the Second World War, during the Cold War, and now the last 25 years. We have seen what we have seen, and it may take time, but ultimately, people's power prevail.
Thank you, Mr. President. TPLF using local resources and internationally donated and actually borrowed money. So they are using this resource to create an image that the image we have been talking all along. So what do you think the necessary steps that people in Ethiopia and the nations in the region should take to reverse this dangerous prospect and stabilize the region? And what, in your opinion, is the role of the Oromo people, the largest in the Horn of Africa, in this prospect? And what are the necessary steps your government is taking and will be taking to address these issues? And what is the long-term and far-reaching involvement Eritrea plan to be part of the fix of the problem which has been there?
One thing worth mentioning is the blame of the Wayane on the part of Eritrea. I would say, I would have wished to make my contribution to this tsunami. Unfortunately, I did not do anything at all. This is a popular movement. This is a movement of the people. I would not have refrained from telling the truth. Had I supported the movement, had I done, you may have followed the propaganda machine of the Wayane talking about Eritrea providing weapons through Uganda and then coming to the south. And it's amazing how these people have mastered the art of lying, the art of creating deception to undermine these achievements of the tsunami. They wouldn't like to say this is a popular movement, but they love to blame it on someone else from outside, as if the people of the country, the Oromos and others, have not done their share. It's false. But I would argue and say, why did we support the Wayane? Why did we support the Oromo, the OLF? Why did we support the EPRP and the Mason and others? Why did we partner and create that solidarity? It's a commitment. Nothing will change. It was there in the last quarter of the last century. It is there. Our commitment will remain. That's not going to change. But to blame us for every change inside Ethiopia is a distortion in the first place. Now, to come and say what exactly will happen now as we see events there, I think the lesson learned is it's time out. It's finished. Game over. I would say that to the Wayane. Game over. You have been very smart. You have been very tricky. You have been very cunning, doing things. Creating an enemy of the people of Eritrea, creating an enemy of the TPLF, of the EPLF, creating an enemy of everybody else, even creating an enemy for your own people. You've been very crafty doing that. But game over now. It's finished. You have to surrender to reality. That would be the best message to give. But again, this is a country that has been advantaged by cosmetics, I say. Cosmetics. The IMF was there, the World Bank was there, This is a regime indebted to the international financial institutions. In spite of all these lies we've been hearing about the double-digit growth, where have we been getting all this pampering from international financial institutions to give us an impression that you are the most powerful and best stable economy in the, I mean, now look, the resources of Ethiopia have been looted. The economic growth or the image of the economic growth given is an artificial and distorted picture designed and decorated by the patrons of Wayane. I think it's the message of the tsunami is not for Wayane. Wayane, time over. It's game over now. But the message goes beyond Wayane and beyond Ethiopia. It goes to those patrons who have wrongly believed that they can use the Wayane to promote their agenda in the region. It's time over. It's game over again. You can't continue to do that in spite of the resistance and the fight of the people for freedom in Ethiopia and outside Ethiopia. You can't continue to do that. You have to learn your lesson from this tsunami. Okay? It was educative for me and for everybody else here in the EPLF and Eritrea. It was a surprise even to us, even though we felt we were close, we were there. Not at all. It was a surprise. And we have learned our lesson. Our lesson is we need to do more, and we need to be committed more, and we need to make our contribution to the future developments in Ethiopia, in spite of blame here or there. It's a commitment. I mean, you have no other option. It's nothing new. Is it something that has evolved because of the last 2 years? Not at all. We may have not been very comfortable with the events in Ethiopia. It's a border dispute, Security Council sanctions. It's trying to tie our hands and intimidate us with sanctions and punishments here and there. In spite of all that, the commitment has been there. But have we contributed physically to the events in Ethiopia? Not at all. I would regret that we have not been able to do as we would like to do because of circumstances, because of limitations. But after the tsunami, after the lesson we have learned from the events of the last 2 years, I wouldn't bother if I am blamed for supporting the Tigrayan, the Amharas, or the Somalis. I would do that because I'm not reinventing anything. It's not even a political commitment based on ideology. It's a necessity. It was a necessity when we supported the Wayane, the APRP, the Mason, the OLF and others, the 70s of the last century, the 80s of the last century. It's a commitment that is there, and this is a necessity. It's a predicament for every people in the region to collectively fight for a change in reality. And we were talking about 92, a transition for the whole region, the Horn of Africa region will have to enter a new era in its history, and an environment will have to be created for the solidarity to be transformed into a regional bloc that will have to live together, cooperate, and live in prosperity. Anything new in that? Is that a crime? Is that a mistake? It's a commitment that has to be there, not because of one political organization preferred it as an option or not. It's a necessity for the people of the Horn. So the tsunami was there. Everybody has learned this lesson. The people have seen their strengths. The people have learned a lot, and they have been daring enough to challenge all the threats and killings of the Wayane and survive. Wayana has learned its lesson. Patrons of Wayana have learned their lesson. Friends of the people of Ethiopia have learned their lesson, and definitely that will consolidate or embolden the commitment of the people of this country who are not new to any solidarity with the people in Ethiopia, particularly the Oromo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just following to Garasu's question, there is a well-known and documented method that Wayana uses in terms of dividing people and pitting them against each other, pitting the Amhara people against Oromos, the neighboring Somalis communities with Oromo communities. Even though we know that this is, as you mentioned it, this regime does not represent the whole Tigray population, but still they're leaving a bad and negative legacy between the relationship of the Tigray people versus the others. In international arena, to divert, they provoke war around, defame their neighbors. All this thing is part of the internal and external division to survive on power by irresponsibly pitting people to one another. What is your message to the people of Ethiopia and the surrounding area to be vigilant and see this Wayane work in trying to pit the people against each other?
You have to talk about the psyche. They don't like it, but again, I say it again and again, it's a fact of life. How did the Wayana evolve as a political organization? This is a small group. It's not even representative of Tigray. You go and see the situation in Tigray, it's divided into regions also. You will never, you shouldn't underestimate that. But again, why all this? Why this ideology? Why this orientation, distorted orientation of a small group? Now, early 70s, our controversy and the discussion was on the right of Tigray to independence, as Eritrea would interpret its right to self-determination in terms of independence because of colonialism. And the TPLF guys will come and say, we have also been colonized. By whom? Who knows? I don't know. But again, it's not a question of semantics. It's a matter of belief. The 70s, much of the discussion here in Eritrea and outside Eritrea was about the independence of Tigray. Okay? We said there is no historical justification for that. You cannot claim. Every people have every right to self-determination, but self-determination is a very elastic concept, and it has to take stock of historic events so that we can interpret or take one or that. Now, again, Wayana shifted from that ideology of independent Tigray into an Ethiopian organization. It took a long time for the TPLF leadership to recognize that they are part of Ethiopia. And this is documented. People may have forgotten some of the details and events, but again, Wayana never believed that it was part of Ethiopia. And I always said, this schizophrenic mentality. You're not settled for one thing. You want to be independent on the one hand, but anytime you can change and say, well, you are more Ethiopian than Ethiopians themselves. You would play, you would be talking about Ethiopia, and it's schizophrenia. It's a split of mentality of one political group, a small group, with the feeling that they have been looked down upon, humiliated by the Amharas, and they have to revenge. This feeling was always there, and I would talk about Amhara chauvinism and this and that. And finally, this group that has always felt very much at a disadvantage in terms of history, in terms of its social, cultural, political position, will have to impose itself above anybody else. It's a very small group, not confident about own conviction, about its own ideas, and has to impose or prevail in spite of everything. How do you prevail? How do you prevail? It's like the British Empire. They would go and divide India into clans, and they would fight against each other, and the empire will prevail. Okay? It's smaller groups that are not confident on themselves and their ability to live in peace with others. They have to manipulate division as a means of controlling. Dividing and ruling, dividing and controlling is the psyche. You can't live with others even when you are a minority. It's not a matter of numbers. The Oromos being 50%, the Amharas being 20, 25, 30%, the Tigrayans being 6 to 7%. That's not the question. It's not a matter of numbers. It's a matter of mentality. Are you prepared to live with others in a nation? Are you prepared to live with others in a neighborhood, cooperate, live like human beings, live as like citizens? Big, small, majority, minority, are you willing to live in that? That has been the curse for us in the region, in the neighborhood, for these people to come to control Ethiopia and finally use the resources of Ethiopia to divide each and every. Incite hatred between the Oromos and the Amharas, between the Oromos in different regions, the Somalis and the Afars, the Afars and the Tigrayans, the Amharas. It's typical. It's typical, but it's a reflection of the mentality. It's a reflection of the psyche of a group that is inconfident in its own capabilities to live with others, and will have to manipulate division as a way of controlling others. No surprise that they can divide the people of Tigray into regions, they can divide the people of Oromo, they can fight, they can incite a problem between the Oromos and the Amharas and Tigrayans, among the Amharas, Gojam, Begemidir, Gondar, whatever, all these manipulations are there. So don't be surprised. It's not a surprise to me because the 70s, the discussion that was there, it's amazing. It's in fact 91. One of the major misunderstandings was Eritrea was a threat to their control of power in Ethiopia. This perception manifested in a number of ways. Eritrea would be using Ethiopia as a dumping ground. We'll have to have checkpoints. We'll have to have customs offices along the border. We'll have to control trade between the two countries. Even eggs and chicken will have to be controlled along the border because Eritrea becomes a threat to their. Where from do you get these fancy ideas about everybody being a threat to you? You feel threatened by everybody else, and you develop a political program based on your assumptions. It's totally alien to the people of Tigray. It's alien to the people of the Afar region, the Oromo, the Amharas, the Somalis, and other groups. I think the sad thing in Ethiopia, including the problems we have faced the last 2 centuries, is this mentality, this sick mentality of a kleptocracy. When you talk about their economic programs, it's not meant for economic benefits for the people of Ethiopia. I will tell you a story. I've never said it public, but again, it's a manifestation of the attitude and the mentality of this small gang that has made life very difficult in the region. 1993, we were in Cairo attending the OAU summit for the first time. Eritrea was represented there and Ethiopia was there. And the Prime Minister then said, well, he wants to talk about the Nile with the Egyptian authorities. I mean, we're friends talking to each other. I said, do you need to talk about the Nile with the Egyptians at this particular moment? We are only 1 year, 2 years old. We have some other jobs to do. I said, we don't need it. You can talk about anything, any regional issue with any party, Sudanese, Egyptians, Kenyans, anyone else. But this is not the right time for us to. Anyway, he went and talked with the second man in the government, and he was infuriated. I never knew he went and talked to the Egyptians, and he was infuriated and said, I thought, what happened? I was humiliated, and the guy said, who are you to talk about the Nile? And that provoked a reaction. I will show these guys, I will punish them. And the Millennium Dam idea came in 1993 to punish Egypt. It's not meant for the development of Ethiopia. It's not meant for the benefit of Ethiopians. Electricity, 5,000 megawatt or 100,000 megawatt, doesn't matter, but it's meant for your vendetta, your feeling from inside. You want to punish someone else. You want to punish Eritrea, you want to punish this and that. All these economic the programs have been motivated by the feeling that you need to give an image of a grand story, and that gratifies you as a weak, inconfident mentality. I mean, now people talk about the Millennium Dam. The Millennium Dam, the idea came as a result of this reaction and trying to punish. Mengistu was also saying, well, if the Arabs have oil, we have water. That was saying, but again, it did not evolve to a political and economic program for the regime of Derg at that time. But this was the inception of this idea. You can imagine how these ideas evolved and how this sick mentality managed politics, economy, security, even international relations. It's based on this assumption. And people in Ethiopia will have to recognize or realize this mentality. If we're talking about a transition, we have to go to a transition, a healthy transition that will allow healthy participation of everybody else, not kleptocracies or sick groups like the one we have seen the last 20 years in Ethiopia. It's not been a disadvantage to Ethiopians, but a disadvantage to the whole region. The Somalis have been a casualty. All other regions have been a casualty to this mentality, which was pampered by patrons from outside. And any roadmap for the future will have to take stock of this lesson we have learned the last 25 years and maybe more. So I think it's good that we talk about this, and the people in Ethiopia need to realize they want to incite a problem amongst the Isas and the Afars, amongst the Tigrayans themselves, amongst Amharas and Tigrayans, the Oromos and Amharas. Now look, forget this idea of my enemy, or there are no enemies. The Oromos are not enemies of the Amharas are not enemies of the Tigrayans. Nobody is an enemy of anybody else. Rulers, yes. Kleptocracies like the one we have in Addis, yes. But again, the idea that people are enemies of each other will have to be one of the lessons learned, and no person will have to entertain this idea of our enemies. I mean, that's how Wayane survived the last 25 years, polarizing society vertically. Polarizing society vertically is an easy way of controlling and manipulating populations. Oromos, Amharas, Afars, Somalis, Tigrayans, Gambelas, Shankilas, whatever. It's nothing new in the history of Ethiopia. Even rulers before Wayane have used that kind of manipulation, but enough is enough. Enough is enough. We shouldn't be misled by these machinations of small Sikh groups that seek to control power in Ethiopia, economic, political, cultural, social, even relations with the neighborhood will have to be based on healthy attitudes. When we talk about the future, the roadmap for the future of our neighborhood, we'll have to think in healthy manners.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are now about to finish our questions, and we want to take you to the global situations. How do you assess the current global situation and all the stakeholders in the region work together in coordination to create mutual understanding, to expose the reality on the ground, and to bring about the betterment of the future of the region?
I would always say, and we need to understand and appreciate the interaction of local circumstances, regional and global circumstances, because they influence each other. We live in a globalizing, even though we disagree with many who would like to preach this idea of globalization. I say we are living in a situation where international relations, regional and local issues are intermingled, regional and global issues are intermingled. That's a reality. And it is not sustainable for anyone, powerful or weak, to imagine that they can live at the disadvantage of others. It's impossible. We are not fond of unipolar or multipolar or bipolar. It's not a matter of polar, uni or omni or multi. That's not the case. This is not sustainable. The 20th century, we have seen the First World War, the Second World War, and then came the Cold War. It was a bipolar, but nobody was convinced that this bipolar situation is best for the people of the world. It's a changing world. We are in the 20th and 21st century. It has to be based on the rule of law. It has to be based on the recognition of the right of others. It has to be based on the recognition of the sovereignty of human beings and peoples. Otherwise, taking advantage of your resources and trying to impose something or repress someone is not sustainable at all. Leave alone at a local level, globally, it's proven that this is not sustainable. The Cold War was there, it was not sustainable. The Soviet Union was there, the Western Bloc, the United States and others were there. It didn't bring a better world for everyone, not at all. Those who had the resource, those who had the control, manipulated everything. Wall Street controlled everything, banks controlled everything, and there was a disadvantage in terms of wealth sharing globally. Wealth was not shared fairly amongst peoples. Some people were, because of a disadvantage, were looted by others. And we can see the situation in Africa. Africa is supposed to have 60% of the world, of the global resources. The most marginalized, poorest continent ever is Africa. Why? Because of imbalances, disadvantage at a global level. Africa remains marginalized in spite of the endowments and the resources that it owes. Asia, Europe, Americas, Australia. It's not sustainable for one power to come and control everything. And that was the serious and major mistake committed by those who felt this is the end of the world. Fukuyama, Huntington, telling us this is the end of the world, and they have every advantage and every opportunity to take resources, control resources everywhere in the world, and be the only military power, the only power that controls technology. How can one imagine this idea or this ideology is sustainable? It's not sustainable. It was not sustainable during the bipolar era of the Cold War, or even the last 25 years of the so-called unipolar. We have not seen a unipolar world. There was an attempt of creating a unipolar global system. This world order was not realized because it was not based on fair share of resources and fair share of opportunities. That was not there. Those who felt that this is a time for them, Huntington, Fukuyama, or everybody else who propagated that the West will prevail, capitalism will prevail, all other ideologies are not going to survive for a number of years. So control and control is hegemony. This idea of hegemonizing everything, economy, culture, media, technology, military, everything, was a distorted idea. It was a flawed ideology that created all this havoc the last 25 years, all this phenomenon of terrorism, instability here and there, the global financial crash, 2008, 2009, the crisis we see today is a result of this misguided ideology or misguided policy, containing containing Russia, containing China, containing this, containing that. Now, this is not sustainable. Mutual benefits, shared benefits, fair opportunity for everyone is the only rule of the game. It's not a matter of unipolar, bipolar, or omnipolar. This world order will have to come willy-nilly, because it's not sustainable. No one can accept to remain marginalized for generations. No one can accept the fact that someone is looting resources. We can share benefits, we can share interests, we can have common goals and work together to achieve them, as we've been saying in the neighborhood, the Horn of Africa. We can live together without one taking advantage of the other. We can live in peace, we can cooperate. Then that would be for the better of human beings in this region. Now, the interaction of local, regional, and global situations will have to be taken stock of. You're talking about Oromos, you're talking about Amharas, you're talking about Afaris, you're talking about your locality. Yes, you are responsible for that locality, but you have to see it within a bigger context, within a bigger picture. The regional setting is very important. The international setting also is very important. Now we have to say enough is enough. We have seen 25 years of attempts from all directions to create a unipolar system. This unipolar system is not viable. The policies we have seen in our region, the policies that adopted Wayane as an anchor in the region is flawed. It's not a matter of Wayane, anybody for that matter. Trying to put in one region and one neighborhood a policeman who will be implementing your agenda is not sustainable at all. We have to be left alone, and we'll have to manage our own affairs in a collective manner. No one can impose anything upon anyone, small, big, powerful, weak. It's not sustainable. I think now we can talk about a process that aborted. It was aborted. No one can say the last 25 years we have a unipolar system. It was an attempt of creating a unipolar system, and the consequences are the disaster we see, the confusion we see, the wars that we have seen, the instability that we see. It's a result of the attempt of those who believe that they can control and hegemonize everything in the world. Now, I think they should have learned their lesson. And it's very obvious that there is not going to be a unipolar global order. There has to be an order based on the rule of law, on the respect of the sovereignty and rights of peoples, and based on cooperation and mobilization of mutual resources for the benefit of everybody else, not one taking, like, say, the Oxfam report recently talking about 4 Indonesians having the same amount of wealth as 90 million. Imagine 4 versus 90 million. Wayana can tell about this multi or double-digit economic growth, 1,000 versus how many million in Ethiopia? That is not sustainable at all, locally, regionally, and globally. And I think it may not take a dramatic course, but people are now aware, because of the lessons learned in the last 25 years, this attempt of hegemonizing the globe is not sustainable. So change course. What we have seen in the region, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, that policy did influence all the disasters we have seen. Why was the Wayane depending heavily on this encouragement from those who felt they can hegemonize by assigning the Wayane as a policeman in the region? Has it brought anything good for Ethiopia, for the region? Not at all. So they have to change course. We have to fight for our rights. We have to fight for our own stability, for our own good. But at the same time, we have to engage with regional and global forces also to either limit their negative influence on our own reality or engage them in a manner that will change their attitude as far as this new global order is concerned. And I think it's a responsibility. It's not a matter of waiting to see what they do. And we're not expecting dramatic change the coming 2-3 years, but the symptoms here and there indicate that this idea of hegemonizing global order with one power is not sustainable at all. And we can take that as an advantage. As we said in the 90s, 25 years ago, the Cold War is over. And that creates a new opportunity for the people of the Horn of Africa. And let's take advantage of this new reality. Unfortunately, all these distortions happen in spite of. We now again say this also is an opportunity for us and others anywhere in any part of all the continents that we have in the world. And I say we may not unrealistically think about the opportunity, but it's an opportunity we need to take advantage of. Take advantage of expecting manna or something to happen from the other side, not at all. We have to rely on our own efforts and our own hard work, so that we can also expect something good from the others, regional or global. Focus on our local situations. If we can change our own reality, if we can change a better environment for the cooperation of the peoples of Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, definitely that will have an impact and influence on the thinking of regional and global powers.
Mr. President Isaias Afwerki, again, in the name of the Oromo Media Network viewers, we thank you very much for taking your time and talking to us.
Wish all the best for the people.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.